Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 687, February the 8th, 2019, Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get to it here. Well, let's see. We have the first story today is we have John Solomon, who has now revealed in a new article that Adam Bug-Eyed Fool Schiff was photographed with Glenn Simpson of Confusion GPS in 2018 during the Spygate cover-up, which still continues. They were photographed together at the Aspen conference. Of course, I'm sure that was just a coincidence. What do you think? Now, didn't Schiff, wasn't he the one who prompted Paul Big Ears Ryan, Eddie Munster Ryan, to have an ethics investigation against Nunes because Nunes spoke to someone regarding that could have been one of the people involved and would have been questioned about the Trump-Russia investigation, and he spoke with someone there without telling the committee of the whole. Or he went over and looked at into the Schiff and looked at some things without telling the committee of the whole. Well, in this particular case, it doesn't appear that Adam Bug-Eyed Fool Schiff mentioned to anyone on the committee that he met with Glenn Simpson back in 2018 as they were holding these hearings and are still holding hearings, essentially. Sounds like, to me, that there should be an ethics investigation. Now, when Nunes was undergoing his ethics investigation, he had to step down from his leadership role on the House Intel Committee. Now, Adam Bug-Eyed Fool Schiff is the head of that committee. I think that Nunes should recommend that Adam Schiff be looked at for an ethics violation, and that he too should have to step down during his time while he's under an ethics investigation. Sounds fair to me. How about you? Well, just as you think that this crazy story can't get any crazier, it has. Back to Virginia and the Freakshow circus that's going on there. The Democrat Freakshow circus is what we're looking at. The Virginia Democrat Freakshow circus has now added another clown. It appears that Virginia Congressman Bobby Scott, an African-American member of Congress, Democrat, was informed about the sexual assault in question by the Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax, probably his friend, back in 2017 by the woman who's alleging that this happened, by the alleged victim. And he said nothing. He buried it. Throughout that entire time with the Me Too thing going on and all these things about sexual assaults and all these things going on, he was alerted by the victim about Fairfax, and he did nothing. Nothing. Not only that, Bobby Scott himself, this Democrat congressman, is also facing accusations of sexual harassment. My. What the hell is going on with the Democrats in Virginia? What kind of a freak show are you running? Sexual assaults, blackface, Michael Jackson moonwalking. What the... My God. Virginia used to be like a red state, a solid state. What's happened? You Democrats better wise up in Virginia. Look at what you're running there. And let's not forget, as nutty as this is with all these sexual assault allegations and all this stuff going on, let's not forget that this all started with the comments by the governor, who hopefully will soon be the ex-governor, about post-birth abortion. Let's not forget, in all this controversy with all the sexual allegations and all the blackfacing and all that, that's all pretty bad stuff. But it happens probably every day. It's just these corrupt son of a bitches here have double standards. They're weasels. Well and good. But let's not forget the real problem with all of this going on in Virginia. It's a governor that comes out and explains, as he endorses, post-birth abortion. Let's not forget that. The Senate Intelligence Committee chair, Mr. Barr, no friend of the president by any stretch, and now I guess Mark Warner would be head of that committee. Now it was Barr, now it's Warner, but they're both working together, both anti-Trumpers. But they have released a statement saying pretty much that they have no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. Same thing that the conclusion that the House Intelligence Committee came to, that there was no Trump-Russia collusion, which is pretty much the same thing that Uncle Bob is going to come to. No Trump-Russia collusion, because the entire thing was a hoax from the very beginning. A hoax. And that's going to be exposed in the months to come. And I certainly hope Mr. Barr holds people accountable. At the very least, one thing he cannot deny, and there's many, many things he cannot deny. He cannot deny that FBI officials leaked information to the media, then used these stories by the media to get FISA warrants on a private citizen, so that they could use intelligence techniques and technology to essentially spy on the Trump campaign, to use what information they could get to frame the incoming president and destroy him. That's a problem. It's also a crime. This cannot be, you cannot ignore this. It's not even up for debate whether or not it happened. That's exactly what happened, and much more. Mr. Barr, we're going to find out very, very soon whether or not he actually believes in equal justice under the law. Rand Paul is calling for the Senate to hold hearings on the FBI's methods and selective prosecution of Trump officials. Yep, essentially what you can see happening now in the past 2 or 3 days is you can see that Adam Schiff has started his investigation, made it known to the White House that he's going to be investigating everything Trump, his records, his finances, his business, everything he's ever done. Adam Bug-Eyed Fool Schiff is going to be investigating that. He should be kicked off the committee for ethics violations, or he should go under an ethics investigation and be forced to step down while this is going on. But that's on another note. But anyway, what you can see happening is that Schiff is now starting his investigations. Then we have this idiot, Mr. Nadler of the House Judiciary Committee. He's beginning his investigations. So now what you see is on the Senate side, where the Republicans are in control of the Senate, they're, of course, countering by calling for their own investigations into Democrats, Spygate, the FISA warrants, the crooked FBI and DOJ people, the Mueller investigation, the whole 9 yards. So we're going to see dueling investigations for the next 2 years. And that can muddy the water quite a bit. But hopefully, in the end, the truth will come out about which is a hoax and which is a real crime. I think it will be very obvious if there is any justice in this country, if there's any leadership from Mr. Barr, who should be able to very quickly sort this out and separate the wheat from the chaff, the crime from the fantasy. Will he hold people accountable? He's going to have to, because we know that Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray certainly did not hold anyone accountable. He got the IG report, and he recently got another report. naming specific individuals on the FBI who violated all kinds of rules, regulations, and probably laws. And he didn't prosecute or do anything to a single one of them. Let it all slide. Well, it looks like Acting Attorney General Whittaker says he will not testify to the House Judiciary Committee if they issue him a subpoena. So what's going on here, of course, we knew this was coming. So Nadler wants to ask Whittaker, call him in front of his committee, and ask him questions about everything regarding Trump. When did he meet Trump? How many times did he talk to Trump? What did they talk about? Did Trump ever ask him to do this or do that? They want to know everything. And they want Whittaker to disclose everything about his communications with Trump. Now, there are certain questions that Whittaker probably will not answer, in which case Nadler said they're prepared to subpoena him to force him into answering these questions. And so we'll just have to see how that goes on. But in this same hearing where they were putting together this subpoena where Nadler was putting together the subpoena because it takes a vote on the committee, and they were putting together this had the vote on the committee to issue a subpoena to Whittaker. The Republicans said, okay, well, if you're going to subpoena Whittaker, then we'd like to subpoena Rodenstein. And the Democrats, I don't have the number. I think I may have it written down somewhere else. But it was a party line vote. And the party line vote was, yes, every Democrat voting to issue a subpoena to Whittaker, and no to issue a subpoena to Rodenstein. That's how the game is played. Right there. The Republicans could have done the same damn thing. They could have done this. See how the Democrats play when they have these committees? They do issue subpoenas, and they do enforce them, and they do bully the opposition party, the minority party, on the committees, block them from everything they want to do, and just run roughshod over them otherwise. This always could have been done by the Republicans. They played nice. They played fair. And they got their ass kicked. Doesn't work with the Democrats. You got to kick them in the nuts. And then when they get up, kick them in the nuts again. And then slap them on the ass on their way out the door. Serious business there. We need some tougher people who know how to play the game in the swamp. It's ugly. It's ugly. Nice people shouldn't go there. William Barr is going to be confirmed as the next Attorney General. The vote today in the Senate that got him out of the Senate Judiciary Committee was, again, a party line vote, just as everything's going to be a party line vote. It was 12 Republicans voting for to confirm, 10 voting against, all Democrats. And so now what will happen is there'll be a vote in the entire Senate, because this was just the Senate Judiciary Committee. Now it'll go to the full Senate. There will be a vote. There are 53 Republicans. There are 47 Democrats. Therefore, Barr will get confirmed. I don't know if there's any Republicans who are going to vote against him. He might even get a couple Democrats voting for him. But it's kind of, in a way, I guess you could say it's good news that so many Democrats are opposing Barr. They're opposing Barr. So maybe they're hearing that he's not much of an ally to them in their future endeavors. Otherwise, they would probably support him. They certainly support Rodenstein. They love Rodenstein. They apparently don't like Mr. Barr very much. Let's see what he does. Trump's approval is now at 49% after his State of the Union speech. 49% after the State of the Union speech. Yes, I thought he would get 3-4 point bump. It looks like he got like 6. So, very, very well done. Can you imagine how high his poll numbers would be if the media hadn't been lying about him for 2 years? Had they been telling the truth for 2 years? Had we not had the Uncle Bob witch hunt going on for 2 years and the false narrative and the lies? Have you any idea what kind of poll numbers Trump would have right now? He'd probably be 60, 65%. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Smelly Nellie Ohr. Smelly Nelly told the House Joint Committee that one of Confusion GPS's sources was Ukrainian government official Sergei Lyshenko. Lyshenko was the source that said Manafort was receiving illegal payments from the Ukrainian government. That had to do with his dealings with Mr. Yanukovych. And they were suggesting that Manafort received illegal payments from Yanukovych, which turned out to be untrue or unprovable. Lyshenko is now being accused by his own government of interfering in the U.S. 2016 election. Pretty soon, it's going to become obvious to the rest of the people following the story that Christopher Steele, as I've been saying for over a year, was not the author of the dossier. Christopher Steele was the launderer. He laundered the intelligence. You see, Confusion GPS, probably being directed and conducted by the Rotten Reverend Clinton with this whole plot she probably cooked up at her dining room table with her friends, Mr. Blumenthal and Shearer and Mr. Podesta and the other hacks. They probably sat around and cooked up this entire plot, but they needed to have someone else execute it because they couldn't have their fingerprints on it. So they contacted Perkins Coie and said, hey, you need to contact Confusion GPS because they do this type of dirty, slanderous stuff. They'll take care of everything, but we'll be conducting and directing it all. We can help you out a lot. We can give you sources. We can give you access. We can give you people. We can get you anything and anywhere you need to go. And then they cooked up the story. They passed it down the line. Confusion GPS put it all together. They were essentially the authors of the dossier, but then they had another problem. How were they going to get it out? Well, of course, Confusion GPS, what they do is they pay people in the media to run their fake news stories for their slander pieces. So that took care of getting it out to the media, but they needed more. They needed to get it into the FBI. And so what they did was they brought in Christopher Steele, because Confusion GPS certainly couldn't walk it directly into the FBI, so they got a hold of Steele. And they had Steele do it because he had this cred, this former British MI6 officer, for that credibility, and say that he got this information through his sources, when in fact he didn't. It was being fed to him right through Confusion GPS or their assets, working for them to funnel this information, along with Mr. Baumgartner, was probably the contact for, it was probably Confusion GPS, contacting Mr. Baumgartner, transmitting the information to him. He passed it to Steele. Then they put them in contact with these various other players who were these agent provocateurs, Mr. Halper, Mr. Downer, and all the rest. They played their role. Christopher Steele then pumped it in the back door through the FBI until he became compromised. When they couldn't do that anymore, then they used Bruce Ohr to pump it in the back door of the FBI, to use it to get FISA warrants, to spy on the Trump campaign, to set him up and pull off a palace coup. Christopher Steele was a launderer. He wasn't the author of the dossier. When we get to the end of this road, I will be proven correct of what I said over a year ago. It's going to be learned that after all this time, everyone describing Christopher Steele as the dossier author, we're going to find out that he wasn't the author of anything. He was nothing more than a turnstile. He was nothing more than a launderer, laundering intelligence, and that this entire plot was cooked up in the bowels of the Rotten Reverend Clinton's living room or dining room or somewhere. This is the Rotten Reverend Clinton plot. These people were all working for her. She was driving this train. That's what we're going to find out when we get to the bottom of this. You wait and see. So, good old Nellie Ohr. So, yeah, this guy, Mr. Lyshenko, he's a dirtball. He's obviously in trouble. He's being indicted or prosecuted or dealt with in his own country, in Ukraine, for getting mixed up in the U.S. 2016 election by feeding false information, which had this effect of creating the special counsel, you see. And of course, if you go to my timeline, or if you watch my older TowerGate videos, this is where the beginning of the Trump-Russia narrative began, because all this was happening back in Ukraine in late 2014, 2015. It was Alexander Chalupa, the DNC operative, who's a Ukrainian national, who was going to the Ukraine, meeting with these government Ukraine officials, getting information directly from the Ukrainian government, taking it back to the states, giving it to the DNC. It was finding its way into the narrative. At the same time, Senator Magoo had his right-hand man, David Kramer, also at the same propaganda media organization in Ukraine, talking to the same people, getting the exact same information, and he was plugging it in to Magoo, and the Magoo was passing it through to his people. This entire plot, that's the origins of the, really is the origins of the narrative, were born in the Ukraine, and had a lot to do with the fact that Manafort was representing Mr. Yanukovych, who was, of course, being supported, I guess you could say, by Putin and the Russians. He was opposed by the U.S. and the European Union and others. That was pretty much the bone in the throat for the U.S. And so Manafort was assisting a guy they hated. And so that's why they decided to target him and Carter Page. And that's how they ended up getting caught up in all this. And then, of course, when Trump came time, he had just about won the nomination, and then the Republican Party, using Ted Cruz, tried to start stealing delegates from Trump. They told Trump, they said, hey, you better bring in someone who's an expert in securing delegates because they're stealing them from you. And so they said, Manafort's your guy. Manafort knows the system. He will come in there and protect your delegates. And that's exactly what he did. He came in for 2 months, worked for Trump, secured the delegates for Trump, and that's when they said, Manafort, Trump, and they began to tie this stuff they've been looking into Manafort, begin to tie that to Trump, and they continued to build this narrative. You can see how they just played the entire thing out. Of course, it was a really nice little video clip the other day of Jim Jordan giving the head of the Office of Government Ethics some hell. His name is Mr. Schaub, for the tweets that he sent out about the conversations he was having with Trump's lawyers at the time that Trump's lawyers were cooperating with the OGE to provide them with documents to go through this ethics process, which is typically when you're a presidential candidate, especially if you're president-elect, which I think was the case at this time, Trump was president-elect, you go through a bunch of different things to clear you to become president should you win the election. One of those things is you submit a lot of documents to this agency of the government called the OGE just to make sure that everything's cool, especially if you're like Trump and you had a lot of international business dealings, you've met a lot of people and all these sorts of things. These are things that you go ahead and present up front and say, here's all the stuff, this is all the stuff I've been doing, this is all that's been going on. That way it doesn't come back later as like something you tried to hide or something like that. You get everything out in the open. This is the process that every political candidate goes through that reaches the nomination of their party and is going to be running for president. They submit all kinds of documents to this OGE for the purpose of putting sunlight on their past, their business activities or personal activities or financial dealings and all these things. It's a way of sort of getting everything out to prevent any possible further legal issues or litigation or problems you may have with people trying to accuse you of hiding something. And so this is standard fare. But what's not standard fare is for the head of the agency to be tweeting out controversial or antagonizing tweets with the individual or his lawyers, or about the individual and his lawyers, which is exactly what Mr. Schaub did. And Jim Jordan called him out on it. Well done. Wow. 49 million people watched the State of the Union. And if you read the story behind this, I believe it's in the American Spectator, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the American Spectator wrote the story. The story really is a narrative about why Nancy Pelosi came out on the losing end of canceling Trump's original State of the Union. Had Trump went ahead and given that State of the Union, had Nancy not deprived him of the invitation to give the State of the Union, he wouldn't have gotten near this number. The speech wouldn't have been received nearly as well. The timing just wouldn't have been right. But because Trump ended the government shutdown, put that to rest, made a compromise offer, and then had the State of the Union under these other circumstances, and so many people tuned in, and so it's one of the most watched State of the Unions ever after they had been in decline. Typically, a president's first State of the Union gets pretty good numbers, and after that, they tank. Well, in this case, Trump got a pretty good number for his first State of the Union, but this one I think actually was better in number-wise. 49 million people viewing the State of the Union. So 76% of the public liked or approved of Trump's State of the Union address. 97% of Republicans approved or liked Trump's State of the Union address. 82% of independents liked Trump's State of the Union address. 82% independents. 71% say there is a crisis at the southern border. 71%. Boom. Victory. 43% of the people watching the speech identified themselves as Republicans. Only 43%. Which meant the majority were Democrats or independents. And he still pulled that kind of a number. Trump wins. Expect Nancy, Madam Botox, to allow enough Democrats to vote for this bill to get the border wall funding, along with maybe the other things that are in it. Expect that just well may happen after all. Just about everyone thought, nope, not going to happen. He's going to have to declare an emergency or whatever. Doesn't want to do that. There's a lot of problems with doing that. He can do it, but there's a lot of problems with it. And although we've heard he doesn't even have to declare a national emergency, that there's other ways to do it. But regardless, the way to have it done actually is to have it done through the Congress. That's the right way to do it. And you don't have any backlash. So it looks like now when Madam Botox and Chuck the Cuck see these numbers, and all these Democrats see these numbers, on top of all the phone calls they're getting from people in their districts, they're going to reach the conclusion that they got their tail kicked in this deal. And Trump won, and Pelosi lost, and Chuck lost. And that the best thing that they can do is allow enough Democrats, they'll probably allow the Democrats that are in purple states or in red states or whatever, they'll probably allow them to cross over, support the bill so it gets just enough votes to get out of the House. It'll go to the Senate. They'll get the exact same thing over there, get just enough votes to pass it. Trump will sign it, and he will get the border wall with the funding he wants. Because Nancy basically gave him the perfect opportunity by canceling the State of the Union. She allowed Trump to play her on this deal and to actually end up in a much better position by giving the speech this past Tuesday instead of then during the government shutdown. It actually played and worked out much better for him this way. He did much better than he would have done, had more people watch, and he made a great case, and it's clear by the numbers. And the Democrats, Pelosi, Schumer, will see these numbers, and they will realize they got beat. And now, not to give Trump the money for his wall would be a only bigger defeat for them. They have no choice. They've been defeated. They can accept the defeat they have, or they can go for a much larger defeat. And then if they try to use parliamentary tactics, or they try to use take it to court or something, it will only backfire them even worse. People will get really angry with them. Trump wins again. Never mess with the planet's most nasty, most talented troll, the president. Well, the Prime Minister of Denmark, Lars Rasmussen, speaking in New York a couple of nights ago, wanted to make it perfectly clear that Commie Bernie Sanders, Commie Bernie, is wrong. He is wrong. Denmark is not a socialist country. It is not a socialist economy. Denmark is a market economy. According to Mr. Rasmussen, the Prime Minister of Denmark, he wants to make it perfectly clear to Bernie to stop using Denmark as an example of democratic socialism. It is not. It is not. Nor are a lot of these other countries that Bernie and other Dems like to use as a model for democratic socialism. They're not. The problem is these people do not really understand the definition of socialism. Socialism is when the government controls the method and means of production. The method and means of production. This is not true in Denmark, nor is it true in Switzerland, or Italy, or Sweden, or Norway, or any of these other countries. It's just not true. Then you have other people that just describe Trump and the conservatives or Republicans or people to the right as being fascist. And again, here's a simple case where they simply don't understand the definition of the word. Fascism is the merger of government and corporate power. It's when the government and the corporations join together to impose tyranny on the people. The merging of corporate and state power is fascism. That would be much closer associated with the left. Much closer associated with the left. And socialism, controlling the means of government, controlling the means of production, is obviously something of the left. This is where Democrats, democratic socialists, social justice warriors, whatever you want to call them, the green people, whatever you want to call them, this is why they've just been poorly educated. They've been propagandized. They paid hundreds of thousands, maybe many thousands of dollars for these educations they thought they were getting at liberal universities run by communists, and they've been given a really bad, they've been given a miseducation. They don't even understand the terms they're arguing in the most simple terms. They just don't get it. They just don't understand. But they go out there full of ignorance, blinded by ignorance. A perfect example is Ocasio Marty Feldman Eyes. She's dumber than a doorknob, hasn't got a clue, yet she goes out there like she's some sort of an expert and tries to persuade people to her point of view. When in fact, most of the people she's trying to persuade have a lot more knowledge, information, intelligence, education, whatever, than she does. When she tries to do all this stuff, I look at her as like an idiot. She's trying to educate me. I clearly am either smarter than her, or studied better, or harder, or had better education, or understand at least the most basic terminology to describe things. Her most recent faux pas is she puts out this new Green Deal that comes out yesterday, calling for the end of air travel. I wonder if she knows that airplanes do not run on unleaded fuel. Airplanes run on JP6 or JP8 or some type of avionics fuel, which is 90% propane and 10% detergent. Propane, the absolute cleanest burning thing that we have, is propane. That's what planes use for fuel. 90% propane, 10% detergent. She wants to ban all air travel. Now, Mazie Hirono didn't like hearing that very much because Cortez can't explain how they're going to have a high-speed rail between California and Hawaii. Maybe you can have high-speed rail. I guess you could go underground. I guess you could go under the ocean, on the ocean floor. It'd be quite expensive. I don't know if I want to do that if it were me. But anyway, didn't sound like Mazie Hirono was very happy about that. She lives in Hawaii. She has to commute to the continental United States and without air travel. And so they want to get rid of air travel. They want guaranteed housing, guaranteed college education. I mean, the thing is just absolutely so off the charts that even Pelosi could not endorse it. She put it up on her website, to a link to the website, on her website, for about an hour, maybe two. And it was so bad, it took so many hits, so many people laughed at it so hard, it was such a disaster that she had to take it off of her webpage and her website, her congressional website, within 2 hours of putting it up, because it's so ridiculous.